Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into something that, honestly, it almost beggars belief how a single shipwreck could basically tear a kingdom apart. It changed England's destiny for, well, decades, maybe even centuries.
Absolutely.
We're talking about an event that was so foundational, yet often maybe overlooked, a real pivot point in medieval England.
Definitely.
So how could one ship sinking be that monumental? If you want a shortcut to, really getting a handle on a crucial medieval moment, well, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this. The White Ship disaster.
That's it, exactly. The puzzle is how something that sounds like, well, just a terrible accident at sea could trigger such massive change.
Right.
What's fascinating here is that disproportionate impact. So our mission today is to explore, what led up to that night, the chaos right after, and maybe most importantly, the incredible, long-lasting legacy, drawing on what the historical sources tell us.
And what a backdrop for this story. Let's set the scene. England, late 11th, early 12th century. After William the Conqueror wins at Hastings in 1066, the country is, well, understandably, pretty divided, deeply fractured, really.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly.
But then comes King Henry VI, Henry Beauclerc, William's fourth son. He gets the throne in 1100, kind of unexpectedly. His older brother, William Rufus, died in a hunting accident. Suspicious maybe, but that's another story.
Convenient, let's say.
Henry really worked hard, though. Tried to heal those wounds from the conquest, bring some order. And by 1120, it really felt like England was, on the cusp of something good. A bright, stable future seemed almost guaranteed.
Almost.
Little did they know, one reckless night was about to shatter everything.
You've hit on the key point there, that feeling of certainty. And a huge part of that stability, that sense of a golden age coming, it all rested on Henry VI's dynastic clans.
His son.
Exactly. His only legitimate son and heir, William Adelin. He was the linchpin. He was growing up, being trained for leadership. He was the future of the Anglo-Norman kingdom.
Right.
And just the year before, 1119, William makes this really important marriage, strategic, to the daughter of Fulk V of Anjou.
Okay, so that brought peace.
Yeah, it brought peace between England and Anjou, which was huge. And it helped secure Normandy, too, especially after the Battle of Bremule. Louis VI of France basically had to recognize William as Duke of Normandy then.
Oh, okay.
So you can imagine spirits were incredibly high. This future, this continuation of Henry's line, it all seemed locked in. It was all built around William.
Absolutely. A moment of real triumph, celebration even.
Yeah.
So let's jump to November 25th, 1120. Barfleur, the port in Normandy. The atmosphere must have been buzzing. We hear about this guy, Thomas Fitzstephen, captain of a brand new ship, apparently very splendid, lime-washed, called the White Ship, Blanche Neff.
Sounds impressive.
He offers this ship, says it has 50 experienced oarsmen, to King Henry d'Albret himself for the trip back to England. But Henry, maybe he already had a travel plan sorted. He says, no thanks. But he suggests, hey, let my son William Adelin take it. Along with some of Henry's other kids, illegitimate ones like Richard of Lincoln, Matilda Perch, plus relatives, nobles.
A lot of important people.
Oh, yeah. About 200 of the young Anglo-Norman elite. Maybe 300 people total, including like 140 knights, 18 noblewomen.
Wow. A generation almost.
And the sources, they paint this picture of a massive party on board. Excellent wine, flowing freely. Apparently, both the young nobles and the crew were pretty heavily intoxicated. They were clearly having a good time, delayed setting off. And then they got this foolish notion, as one source puts it, of racing, trying to catch up and overtake the king's ship, which had already left.
Oh, dear. High speeds. Drunk crew. That sounds bad.
Yeah, like a recipe for disaster.
It absolutely was. And tragically, they followed that recipe perfectly. Here's where it gets really interesting and just devastating. Orderic Vitalis, he's one of the chroniclers from the time, he gives this vivid, horrifying account. He describes the scene: drunken rowers, a helmsman not paying attention, and the ship smashes into this rock, a well-known hazard apparently, called the Keelboof Rock, just outside Barfleur Harbor where they just lived.
So close to shore.
Right there.
Yeah.
The planks just shatter, the ship capsizes, flips over, without warning, everyone thrown into the freezing cold sea. Late November.
God, that's awful.
And their screams. People ashore heard them, but they just thought it was more partying, more revelry from the ship.
No.
Yeah, the terrible irony. Thinking it's just noise while absolute horror is unfolding in the dark.
That is incredibly chilling. Just imagining that the scale of the loss, a whole dynasty's future just gone in an instant. What about William Adelin, the heir? Any chance for him?
Well, for a moment, yes. He actually got into a lifeboat. He was clear.
Okay, so he escaped.
He should have, but then a fatal mistake. Maybe compassion, maybe panic. He heard his half-sister, the Countess of Perch, screaming for help from the water.
Oh, no. Don't tell me he went back.
He ordered the little boat to turn around, to go back for her. And in the chaos, the other people drowning, desperate, they swarmed the lifeboat, overwhelmed it.
So it sank, too.
It sank, too, taking William Adelin, Henry's other children on board, and, a huge chunk of England's young nobility, all wiped out, gone.
Just like that?
And William's body, never found. The loss was almost total.
Almost. You said almost. Was there anyone, a survivor?
Incredibly, yes.
Yeah.
Just one. A butcher from Rouen, name of Berold. He managed to cling onto some wreckage all night.
How did he survive the cold?
It's thought maybe his clothes helped. Sheepskins, goatskins, the sort of thing a butcher might wear. Kept him just warm enough. Amazing luck, really.
Yeah, and the captain? Fitzstephen.
The stories say he surfaced, saw the heir was dead, and just chose to let go. Drowned rather than face King Henry.
Wow. A grim choice. Understandable, maybe, given the magnitude of what happened.
Absolutely.
And Henry I, they say he was utterly devastated. The legend is he never smiles again after he got the news.
You can imagine. The personal grief must have been immense.
But it wasn't just personal grief, was it? It immediately became this huge dynastic crisis. William was his only legitimate son. Was there any kind of plan B?
No, not really. That's the thing about medieval succession. You relied on that male heir. William was the plan. Henry had bet everything on him.
So a vacuum.
A massive vacuum.
Yeah.
Suddenly, you've got two main people with a claim. Henry's legitimate daughter, Empress Matilda. She was the widow of the Holy Roman Emperor. Later married Geoffrey of Anjou.
Right.
And then Henry's nephew, Stephen of Blois. And here's a twist of fate. Stephen was supposed to be on the White Ship.
Really?
Yeah, but he apparently got off just before it sailed. Said he had a stomachache or something.
Talk about lucky. Or convenient.
Indeed. So now you have Matilda and Stephen.
And this wasn't just about who Henry wanted, was it?
Yeah.
When we look at the bigger picture, William's death instantly throws a spotlight on the problems with succession, especially with a female heir. How did people feel about a woman ruling back then?
That's the crucial point. If we connect this to the bigger picture, having a woman rule was just, deeply unpopular.
Oh, yeah.
Especially with the powerful barons.
He wouldn't accept it.
Largely no. Even though Henry had tried, he made his barons swear oaths to support Matilda. But the idea of a queen regnant ruling in her own right in a kingdom like England, still relatively new, still quite rough after the conquest, it was a hard sell. Very hard.
So predictable conflict then.
Utterly predictable. As soon as Henry Serta died in 1135, Stephen just grabbed the crown, dashed across the channel, got himself crowned. Exactly what happened because that power vacuum existed after William Adelin drowned.
And that led directly to
what historians call the Anarchy. 19 long years, basically. A brutal civil war between Stephen and Matilda's supporters from 1135 right up to 1154.
19 years, wow.
Yeah. William of Malmesbury, a historian writing at the time, he summed it up perfectly. No ship that ever sailed brought England such disaster. That single sinking just plunged the kingdom into absolute chaos. It showed how fragile Henry's peace really was underneath it all.
And the effects, they spread out, didn't they? Beyond just the English throne. You mentioned Wales earlier, the death of Richard, Earl of Chester, on the ship. What was his significance?
Oh, his death was a huge blow to Henry's power on the Welsh border. Richard was a key player there, a strong enforcer for the king. His father had won big victories against the Welsh. Richard's job was basically to keep the Welsh princes in line, secure that border region.
So his death created an opening.
Immediately, the Welsh saw their chance and they took it. In 1121, just months after the White Ship went down, they marched on Chester, burned castles, looted.
So Henry had to deal with that too.
He did. He counterattacked, managed to negotiate a sort of peace. But then later, when the Anarchy kicked off after Henry's death, which, remember, was a direct result of the White Ship well, that gave the Welsh rulers an even bigger, longer-lasting opportunity to push back, regain land, raid Norman territories. It really destabilized a frontier Henry had worked so hard to control.
So all that careful work Henry had done, the peace with Anjou, William being recognized in Normandy, it just fell apart.
Completely unraveled. All that careful diplomacy, just gone.
What did Henry do? Diplomatically, I mean.
Yeah.
And personally, how did he react beyond the grief? He had to shore things up, right?
He had to act fast. Desperate for another heir and needing allies, he remarried incredibly quickly. just 2 months after William died.
That's months. Wow.
Yeah. To Adeliza, daughter of the Duke of Louvain, it was purely political. He needed allies against enemies like Fulk V of Anjou, the guy whose daughter William had married, and Louis VI of France. And he needed support against his other rival, William Clito.
So the disaster broke the alliance with Anjou.
Shattered it, led to new fights over territory like Maine. And Fulk V, he didn't just become an enemy again. He teamed up with Louis VI and married his other daughter, Sybil, to William Clito.
So it directly empowered Henry's main rival.
Significantly. It was a real scramble for Henry to try and rebuild his position after the White Ship basically blew up his entire strategy.
Okay, so that's chaos, crisis, scrambling. But you hinted earlier maybe something positive came out of it. Indirectly. That sounds hard to believe given the tragedy.
It does sound strange, doesn't it? A paradox. But yeah, amidst all this devastation, maybe there was an unexpected, you could almost say positive side effect. Though maybe positive isn't quite the right word.
Mm-hmm. How so?
Well, Henry's grief was obviously profound. But perhaps that grief, combined with a need to, establish a legacy in other ways now that his son was gone, led him to pour resources into Reading Abbey.
Ah, the Abbey.
Yes. He started heavily restoring and endowing it in 1121, turned it into this magnificent royal monument, gave it huge privileges, its own mint, a big annual fair. It became a major center.
A focus for his energy, maybe?
Perhaps. And some historians even suggest the shock of the disaster spurred Henry into his most serious and productive years administratively, leading to big reforms, like the development of the exchequer and those famous pipe rolls, starting around 1130.
Pipe rolls, what are they?
Basically, the earliest proper government financial accounts in England, standardized records, they give us this incredible insight into medieval finances that we just wouldn't have otherwise.
So trying to impose order financially after the dynastic chaos.
Possibly. A way to centralize power, control revenue, secure his remaining reign after such a massive shock. So yeah, from chaos, maybe some administrative order did emerge.
And eventually, the succession mess did get resolved, although not quickly or easily. The Anarchy, that civil war, it finally ended around 1153, 1154.
That's right. With Stephen basically agreeing to adopt Matilda's son, Henry, as his heir.
Henry II.
Henry II. He became king in 1154, and that started the Plantagenet or Angevin dynasty, which in a really roundabout, bloody way actually fulfilled Henry II's original goal.
How so?
Well, his line continued through his daughter Matilda, and it created those strong ties with Anjou he'd wanted through William's first marriage, just not the way he planned it all, through decades of war instead of a peaceful succession. So what does this all mean? I think it just shows the incredible, almost frightening power of a single random event to completely change history's direction. The White Ship wasn't just a shipwreck. It was a turning point. It fundamentally shaped English history, European history even, for the whole 12th century and beyond. Without that one ship hitting that one rock,
everything would be different.
The medieval period we know, the Angevin kings who came after, it would all have been incredibly different. It's just a stark reminder that history isn't always this grand, slow march. Sometimes it turns on a dime because of one unforeseen disaster.
It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? That something so seemingly small, a delayed departure, too much wine, a known rock could literally rewrite England's future. A new dynasty, nearly 20 years of civil war, all from that one night. It makes you wonder, what other small moments, what other historical footnotes have sent out these huge ripples that we don't always recognize? Events that change paths we now just take for granted.
It's a great takeaway, really. Always try to look beyond the obvious headline event. History's full of these crucial, sometimes almost hidden catalysts that shape the world we live in now. Sometimes the biggest turning points, they don't come from huge battles or grand plans. Sometimes, like with the White Ship, they come from a single mistake in the dark, out on a choppy sea. It's a powerful reminder that a footnote can actually be the foundation for a whole new chapter.